man, I saw a lot of people streaming over the week, over the New Year's. And I kept thinking, I ought to get in on this stream, this holiday streaming. But when it's quiet, those are catch-up days. Those are the days where we catch up. All right, just getting set up here. Actually going to come back to that in a minute. Let me see here. I got to get my comments set up so I can see what's going on. TikTok live monitor. There we go. All right. Looking good, looking good. So one of the things I wanted to do, let's see if this will work. I was complaining about Miro last week because their tool wanted to just charge me money just for the most basic stuff, and I was feeling pretty frustrated with that. So I thought, oh, maybe right off the bat, what we'll do is we'll set up a new board with Whimsical. This was recommended. Mrs. Jones mentioned Whimsical last week, so I think we're going to try it out. Outline, fill, color. I don't know if I can just arbitrarily change the shape of this. Let's do that one for there. And then can we connect them this way? No, it wants. It doesn't matter. I think let's use the square boxes. I just wanted to quickly recreate a workflow. So we had one there, that one there, this one here. And then the nice thing is, geez, I just did this the other day. We can come down and find all tools, icons. I wanted an email icon. That'll do. Look at that. They're not even going to charge me money for this. What do you think of that, Miro? Oh, now I lost it. All right, we'll just spend a couple minutes on this. I just wanted to see if I could quickly remake this. Want an icon. That's the one. Drag it on there. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Could be a little bit smaller than that. The snapping features of this diagramming tool were also fairly nice. So if we recall, this one here is a booking email. This is going to be a trigger. And so booking email comes in. That was going to kick off our personal assistant, which is sort of a workflow. And then eventually that's going to create an assistant. Oops. Come on, caps lock, create assistant. I think I'd like to color code these based on what they are. Now that I'm feeling like this is such a better tool than what we were using. Oh, I can change the shape right there. Look at that. I want that one to be round. I definitely want it to have an outline. All right. So then this one here, this is actually going to be a secondary workflow, which we started on. So I think the triggers will just change those to like maybe pink or something. That's fine. And then, oh, hey, welcome to the stream. I'm just tinkering with this diagramming tool while I figure out, we went over this last time. I had this set up in another tool, and I'm just kind of playing with this tool. We're actually going to get into building stuff here shortly. I just wanted to, every time we get fired up, and then somebody will come in and say, hey, what are we working on? And then we got to kind of start from scratch, explaining what we're doing. So this one is this is the crawl website, scenario. So each of these is sort of a different scenario. This one I'm going to change the color, so we'll maybe make this one like blue or something, and then this one also blue because we've sort of this one I'm going to make gray because we haven't done that. We haven't actually implemented this yet. It doesn't exist. Yeah, make it dotted on the, so that doesn't do anything yet. This one, this is the actual third-party module that we were using. Last time we were using a module called Use Scraper. Nope, this is called Whimsical, which I'd looked at before, but it was recommended by another creator on here last week when we were doing this, and I'm really enjoying it. I use Figma for some stuff, and man, Figma's, you can do a lot of stuff in Figma. It's pretty wild. But this is just a real quick and easy workflow diagramming tool called Whimsical. Just going to rename this to Personal Assistant just so I can keep track of it. All right, so this one here basically does the actual scrape task. So we'll come back to that. And then we're sort of working on this, but then there's a whole nother workflow down here that gets triggered again. Again, this is another sort of incoming webhook. We'll change that shape again. And this was like the scrape complete webhook, I guess we'll call that. This one was a scrape webhook. Again, these are all different scenarios. We're going to be using make.com. So we've got this. We got some of these started. They're not done. We've got a couple of these sort of built out a little bit. I'm just rebuilding this workflow so that when folks come in and they're like, what are we working on? And I have to re-explain it. We've just got a diagram really quick. So then we can say index the data. We'll talk about that in a minute. Again, this is not finished. So we're going to make this one gray. And then we're going to add one more down below, but it's also not in place yet. So we're going to call this one, this is going to be meeting transcript. Yeah, and then that's also going to go to, change that shape, and then this is also going to index that data as well. There, this is pretty cool. I've rebuilt this entire diagram in like 4 minutes, which is amazing. I'm going to grab another one of these, duplicate the email, because both of these are email triggers. On the top one and the bottom one are both triggered by email. So each of these is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 different scenarios here. We left off sort of in this area right here. Oh, where's my thing? I can draw. Yeah, this area right here. This is where we left off last week. And so we're going to pick up where we left off. I have a better tool. We were using a different web crawling tool last week. I found a better one. I'm excited about this. I get, what's the word for that? Disproportionately, irrationally excited when I start scraping data. It's weird. I don't know why. I don't want to generate with AI. Get out of here. I want to find another icon, and the icon I want is lightning. Yeah, that'll do. That's sort of like our that lightning bolt's our web scraper, or sorry, our webhook. That's what that's going to be. So we've got 4 scenarios. We've got 2 that are triggered by email. Can I put an outline on that? Nope, that's weird. Let's go back to the fill version. That's actually not bad. What if I made that like orange or something? Not so bad. Yeah, I can live with that. Make a copy of that. Just trying to make this easy to see. Those gray icons are not that easy. There, that seems fine. So 2 of these, whoops. Oh, this thing's out of control. 2 of these scenarios are, we got 4 scenarios here. 2 of them, the first one's sort of built. Second one's also sort of built. And then there's actually, if we go off to the side here, we need one more shape. I don't know if they have the shape, that one there. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So we're going to have this I'll just call this like an assistant database, I guess, which is going to be, right now I'm using OpenAI. I'm also looking at different tools. I'm also looking at like different things I can use that'll make this work better, like voice flow and things like that. But the idea behind this is that this assistant here, if I, can I just arbitrarily create, I want to create a connection between these. You're watching me learn how to use this live on TikTok. I kind of want to go to that. And I don't need text. I just want it to do that. So that create assistant task, that first, the whole point of this workflow is that when I get a booking email, see, you can just book with me. If you book on my booking calendar, when it comes in, we're building out this personal assistant. I wonder if I can find a ChatGPT icon. If not, I'm pretty sure we could probably OpenAI. Nope. ChatGPT. We could probably upload one. We'll just say AI. What do they have for AI icons? Nah, we'll come back to that. The whole idea behind this is that if something books in, my personal assistant, which is a custom assistant in OpenAI, can reach out using a custom action function that we have set up in that assistant, and it can go scrape a website. This is where we left off last time. We were working on this particular hook down, or this particular scenario down here, the second one. I'm kind of wondering if I can just put just an outline with no fill. Yeah. So we'll just put a red box around this one, because this is the one we're kind of working on today. We're trying to get this fleshed out. And you are learning how to diagram. We're learning how to diagram in this tool real time. MVGM says, were you a professional dev? Yes. My background is in software engineering. So, hey, everyone, welcome to the live. I see we got some folks on the live. This is pretty great. Only been live for 10 minutes. So if you're new here, my name's Aaron. I'm in Canada. I'm in Western Canada. I've been a software engineer for about 25 years. I got my start in software in a really old, some of you may or may not have heard of this particular tool. I got started out in a tool called Flash. It was owned by a company called Macromedia at the time, which was later bought out by Adobe. And now they still have that tool. That technology is still out there. Now it's called Adobe Animate. They sort of rebranded it because, man, in the tens, in those middle years, it was a little sketchy. It was a little bit. There were some security issues, and yeah, that's right. Jill says, I remember Flash, OG animation. You know what? And I love Flash. I used Flash to build so much stuff. I was right into Flex. I was doing Adobe Flex Dev on Linux in Vim of all things. I went a little off sort of the rails there at one point. Yeah, Director. Actually, Director was the very first tool that I used to animate something in 1998. In terms of like actually animating things, 98 or 99, somewhere in there. And I think they were bought out shortly after that. So my background, so I was a freelance software dev, programmer person, sort of learning the internet in the early 2000s. And I spent about a decade doing that. Very early on, as soon as people started to pay money for me to do things, I realized that I better figure out what the heck I was doing. And so if I ran into a tool that I didn't know what it was or how to use it, I would just learn enough to be able to so that at least I knew sometimes what I was doing. And so my whole career turned into learning things very quickly. And my career today still is learning things very quickly, because I was going to say today, it seems like the industry just like changes every 5 years. There's some major shift that happens. And so there's just this constant need, if you're in tech, if you're interested in tech, to just constantly pivot and shift and understand and learn new things. I had a resume at one point in time, and of course, being not really good at resumes or any of that kind of stuff, when I'd sent it in one time and they said, this is 13 pages. Do you really think you need that much? And I just kind of listed off all of the stuff that I'd used, not really thinking that nobody really cared. I was just more so, it was an exercise just to see everything that I'd worked with. I've since then reduced it down to 2 pages, which I guess is the thing to do nowadays. But because there's so many pieces of tech out there and I'm just interested in so many things, I'm constantly in something new. So, but my background is software engineering. I spend a lot of time in infrastructure. I also study business strategy, or tech strategy, as per Simon Wardley mapping. And I want to do some of that on the live one of these days because it's pretty cool stuff. One of the things I learned about business strategy and also teams is that all organizations have the same two problems. One is change, and two is communication, and usually talking about those changes. And so, just like in marketing, if you're trying to communicate across what we call, I guess, organizational boundaries between different teams, if you can reduce the communication to like one page or like something that everybody can point at and argue over, and you can get everybody using the same language, that'll go a long way. And so I've worked on so many teams that just don't have that, where, us techies, we get real techie, we get real particular about words and details, and so there's this sort of gap in a lot of organizations where people are using sort of the same words, but they mean different things. So, geez, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's where I spent the last, 6 or 8, 10 years of my career, was focusing on how to bridge that gap. And so now I've pivoted a bit into the small business realm in helping just ordinary businesses understand that tech gap and start to leverage some of the tools that are available. Like, not even the most shiniest stuff, just like getting in a better security posture, understanding how to use things like OneDrive or, Google Cloud, or, and then connect a few of these things together. There's so much that you can do without even get it into the shiny stuff. There's so much you can do. Oh, we really sparked off. We found a few folks here who've played with some of the Macromedia stuff, so that's fun. Don says, my band teacher quit to be a Flash developer back in the day, which is a fairly lucrative thing at the time. CD app presentations, yeah, been there. I do not speak French. I took French for 9 years in school, and I can remember the word for riding a horse. I can introduce myself, but we don't use too much French so much over in Western Canada. I think it's a beautiful language. Josh, 1-page resume, please. I might have it down to 1 page. I'm pretty sure it's a page and a half. Nowadays, everybody's looking at so many resumes. I think you got to keep it fairly short. Is the personal assistant an agent? It's a workflow. We'll tie into that right away. Stick around. Kevin says, I'm on the team at my company that implemented Workday. We just went live on New Year's. Cool. I don't know if I haven't played with Workday. I've heard about it. I see all of these tools. Is it like a Monday.com, HR, finance, planning, and spend? Interesting. I haven't tied into that very much. Change and comms are the largest problems. They always are, because your whole management team, their job is change. And then all of the managements, your layers of management, their job is comms. So that's sort of like, and I like, there's 2 tools that I like to use. Let's take a 5-minute detour. I won't talk about Wordly mapping, but if you're in tech, or if you're tech adjacent, or literally any business could actually benefit from this. Let's just go. We'll take 2 minutes and we'll just talk about one particular tool called alignment mapping. This is really cool, because most businesses aren't doing this, and they should be. And I go through this activity with a lot of businesses. We can use the same board. This is a 1-pager that you can use in your business, whether you are in tech or not, where you can sort of just get everybody on the same page. And the idea behind this is there are 4 columns, okay? So we'll just draw 3 and just give me a couple lines on here. Now, how big are those boxes? Let's go back to our box. Yeah, that's good there. Okay. This is a 1-pager. I'm just going to give it, and I'll give you a link to this tool. We can explain this in about 2 minutes. And 2, 3, 4. Just to zoom out a tiny bit. I don't need those arrows. They don't need to be there. And the whole idea behind this is it borrows a little bit from, actually, we will use the arrows. I'll just make them a little bit closer together. This borrows a little bit from like software ideas, and that's sort of one of the things I like to do, is bring software sort of ideas into the business world. where it makes sense. So here we got four columns. This is called an alignment map. It's not really a map. It's more like a chart, alignment chart. And there's 4 columns here, okay? And this is something you can put on one piece of paper. You can put this on one piece of paper, and with that, you can bring all of your teams in, whether it's finance, HR, management, the C-suite, your tech team, IT, sales. Everybody on one page can look at this one piece of paper and have meaningful discussions about what's going on. So this first one here, make sure I got this first column is going to be business outcomes. Okay, this is the hardest one. This is the part where we're not really sure. And I'm gonna stick to IT on this side, but this could really apply to any part of your organization. I'll just use IT because that's my background. So this one's going to be initiatives. Okay, and then this one here is going to be your sort of like action items. Now, it doesn't have to say IT outcomes. It could be sales outcomes. But if you sort of just think of it in terms of the projects or the initiatives that you have going on. And the whole idea behind this is that on this one side of on this side of this pink line on the right-hand side over here, this is, if you're in a tech or tech adjacent industry, this is sort of the stuff that the team is working on. That's, you know, what is the value? What are we working on? Is it a piece of software? Is it a product? Is it whatever that looks like, where we're working on these different things. And then on this side of the business is where our sort of finance and management team is focused on, like, did we hit our, you know, our goals, is the revenue going up, all those different things. And the thing is that these are multiple parts of the business. And so this piece of paper, the whole idea behind this piece of paper is getting everybody on the same page, right? Where you can have, let me flesh this out a bit. You can have, say, multiple initiatives going on, okay? And each of these initiatives can have multiple sort of action items. So let's just flesh that out a tiny bit, okay? Put this one down here, and then we'll have another. And we'll just pretend these have names. I'll put some text in here in a minute. And then we can link these together like so. So if we take this guy, this one here, and we link it to that, and then this is linked to both this one, and it's also linked to this one somehow, even though that's all wacky. Apologies, okay? And then we can link this to here. And the idea behind this is, no, that's not what I wanted. The idea behind this being that we can define these. So an action item might be like launch new website. Okay. Another action item might be add blog posts for some particular thing. Another action item might be let me see, SEO research, something like that. It can be any of these things. And so maybe this one's tied to this one here. And the idea being that this IT initiative might be new site. So we'll call it that. Oh, new site. This one might be SEO project. Okay. And these are actionable things. So these are individual, these might be stories or something at your team level. This is the stuff over here that we don't always do and that actually has a meaningful impact on the business. Okay. What is the IT outcome? What is the thing that is measurable from all of these activities? What is the measurable thing that tells us whether or not this is done? So if you're in software, you've heard this term definition of done. What is the definition of done for this particular initiative or set of initiatives? So maybe the new measurable outcome from this is web visits up 25%. Our web traffic is up 25%. Maybe that's our measurable outcome on that. That's fine. If we step back across this boundary right here, this organizational boundary, again, remember, the stuff on this side is sort of your IT stuff, and the stuff on the other side over here is sort of your business stuff. And the idea of this piece of paper is to get everybody on the same page. So can we tie this outcome on the IT side back to the business? What is the measurable impact this is going to have on the business? Maybe the measurable impact we're looking for is 10% more leads. Maybe that's what we're measuring. These are the things I find most businesses aren't doing. They're not measuring this stuff. We've got a whole bunch of stuff going on over here. We got a whole bunch of, random initiatives, and we're doing all of this stuff and all of the stuff we think we should be doing, all that stuff. We're not measuring it. How do we know when we're done? So then what we can do with this is we might have our web visits might be up 25%. We might actually have multiple initiatives tied to multiple outcomes. This won't let me do my, I don't want the text. I want the little handle. Where are my handles? Let me see if I can figure this out. Get rid of that. I've broken the handle mode. Oh well. I think you get the point. So what you would do with this on a month or week to week or month to month is we can look at these and say, okay, we launch a new website. Is that red or green? Red means we didn't get it done. Green means we did. And so we can look at these on a week to week and month to month basis, right? Maybe that one was green. Oh, let's pick the green that matches. And then we can say, well, this one, where's this project at? Well, this project is in jeopardy because we couldn't get that new website up and running. Or maybe it was. Maybe just the SEO project on the old website was enough that our website, we hit our 25% mark and we got our 10% more leads. Maybe we don't need to do those. Maybe we can stop working on this stuff. If this turns green because we hit our goal, maybe we can stop working on some stuff and set new goals, right? That's the whole point behind this. It's literally just a one pager. Just like, let's get everybody on the same page. What is everybody working on? What goal is that pushing towards at the business level, at the team level and at the business level? And if we get there, if we've checked the box, if we've crossed the finish line, do we still need to continue working on those things? Maybe yes, maybe not. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. I don't know how we got on the topic of we were talking about change in comms, change in communication. So one of the reasons I like that, this is one of the two tools that I use, is that everybody can look at this, point at the boxes. It's one piece of paper, and we can be like, oh, we're not there yet. Our website visits aren't even close. We know we still need to finish that new site. Or maybe there's another initiative. Maybe we have yet another initiative that we want to link back to get those website visits up to 20, get that 25% increase or whatever that looks like. But at least everybody can sit in one room, point at the same boxes, and discuss and make a strategy collectively as a team, right? It's just a communication tool. And being that communication is one of the hardest things in any business, I don't know why we don't have simpler tools for communication lots of times. We tend to make things so complicated sometimes. All right, so there we go, personal assistant. Yeah, let's get back to this because this is what we're here for. All right, so we redrew this really quick. Let me see. Let's connect that to there. So, oh no, the scraper doesn't connect to there. Let's see. Index data, that's going to connect. And this one also is going to connect there. So this is the goal. I wonder if I can make those dotted. I'm just learning this flowcharting tool. Yeah, look at that. That's cool. I'm terrible at like graphing and flowcharting and stuff, but we got tipped off to this tool last week and I love it. It's great. This is amazing. So we're kind of working on this red box today. We're going to tie into that some more. We're going to tie into it. We're going to see how far we can get with. I found we were using a different website to try and scrape last week. I just went and looked at that today. So basically how the task worked is we have this request that comes in. The email comes in here. We're testing this manually. It goes to my personal assistant here. The personal assistant has a custom function that it can call to trigger the website scraping job. That's our second scenario. So that kicks off, sends the URL off to this particular module, which is a whole nother service. And we were using another service. And I went and looked today, and the jobs for scraping that we kicked off last week, they were still running. It run like 4,000 times. Because I don't know if there's a bug in their system or what. Chewed up like $5 worth of credits in the last week just trying to re-scrape this one site over and over and over again. So we've abandoned them. And today we're going to go and try another service that I found that looks fantastic, by the way. So the other service I was using is called Use Scraper. And again, it looks cool. It looks good. It's a spin-off of another company. I just don't know if we found an issue in the webhook. I wasn't handling the webhook properly, so I think that kind of triggered a bug on their end. It's just like retrying too many times. Rami says Tascade is solid. Let's look at that. Tascade. The one I found, autonomous AI agents and workflow automation. I'll have to look into this. Every time I get recommendations, I'll just keep a new browser open over to the side here, and I'll just keep some tabs open. So if you have recommendations for tools that you think would be great for what we're doing here, I'll hang on to those 100%. The one I want to look at today, this looks fantastic, this one. And I've been tinkering with it. There's another recommendation. There's scraping bytes. So I did see this one today. I saw this today when I was searching. So I have specific requirements for this job because just scraping would be easy. I can do that. There's a million things out there. So what I'm specifically looking for is a crawler. I'm looking for something, and I found it. I've tested it out. I'll pull it up right here. I'll keep this one as well because I love scraping. I love scraping. I'll say it 100 times. I just love scraping. So I'm always looking for different tools. But the one we're playing with today is called Firecrawl. This is not an endorsement. I just found it this morning. I've tested it out. It is really cool. And it looks like it does exactly what I want. My requirements are that I need to send it a URL, just a single URL, and it's got to scrape or crawl the entire site, but only pull the stuff that I want. And so some of the requirements, and it looks like these folks will do it really nicely. Let's see if we can get into the docs. On the crawl side of things, I think we need the API docs. API reference, here we go. On the crawl side of things, if we can get into crawl, the difference between scraping and crawling, let me bump that up. The difference between scraping and scraping is just you give it a URL and it pulls the data. And then maybe there's some transformation there. Crawling is a scraping task, but what it does is every time it finds another link, it also follows that. So it'll sort of recursively go through and spider web its way through an entire website, which is what we want. So we had a volunteer last week. We're gonna pull on that thread. Oh, I gotta go find it now. The URL we were working with. Get into my history here. Bear with me. I just gotta find. I forget the domain. It's Mrs. Jones's domain. I don't know if Mrs. Jones is here. Nope. I gotta go back and find it now. Scenarios. Scraper webhook handler. I think that's the one there. Is this the new one or the old one? No, this is the one. History. Yeah, this is the one. Oh, I've lost it now. Okay, we'll come back to it. It's fine. Auto Glass. Why don't you use Puppeteer? Because I don't want to write code. I mean, I could. There's a conversation here. So I feel like the important part of this conversation is, as software engineers, we need to understand, or if you're in tech, If you're in the tech side of things, or you're tech adjacent, or you're just thinking about, if you're a business owner and you're thinking about a technology project, which you probably already are, even if you don't realize it. Okay. Is that there are trade-offs. There's more than one method of development. And if you are thinking that you want to build something, okay, and you're thinking about outsourcing that, you're already going to have a bad time. Okay. Literal Billionaire says that I'm pretending how to code. That's fine. You don't have to. I will tell you one thing. I've basically faked it through 25 years of my career, but I've written lots of code. I am a generalist, so I don't deep dive into anything. I shallow dive into lots of things. And I've taken that fake it till you make it idea to the extreme, in that I learn technologies just enough every single day to get done what I need to do. And eventually I'll read the documentation if I get deep enough, if I need to deep dive into something. But we need to understand, the reason we're not going to write this from scratch is because if you write the code and you deploy it on your own infrastructure, then you maintain everything, okay? You own and you maintain everything. And if you take the total cost of ownership of that job into consideration. So we hear this, there's this myth or this fallacy in tech, especially on the software side, we get really defensive about why would we pay money? That's $25 a month. Why would I pay for that? I can build it myself. Because you're not factoring in your time. I mean, if you don't have $25, that's fine. But I could take an hour or a day and write it myself, or I could build it out in something like Zapier or Make.com in 15 minutes. I'm paying them to get my time back. And it's really going to depend what my use case is. If all of a sudden I need to scale this and run the operation 1,000 or 1,000,000 times a day, then yeah, Make.com is not going to make sense anymore. Then it's worth sitting down and building this out and putting it on the infrastructure where I can run it 1,000 times for a penny. But if I'm prototyping something, or if it's only going to run once a day, I could hire a software engineer who I know the tech industry is like doing whatever it's doing now, but software engineering is still super expensive. So I could hire a really expensive person to build something like even an hour, 4 hours, or 8 hours. And if you hire an engineer who's competent, they're not just going to build it. They're going to write the documentation around it. They're going to make sure they have all of the best practices set up around making sure that changes can be made and all this different stuff. So it's not a 1 or 2 hour project. It's like you're committing to a day or a week. So you're going to spend several days worth of software engineering, or you can prototype it out in Make.com very quickly, right? They're trade-offs, and they're not mutually exclusive. Depending on where you are in your journey as a startup or a tech whatever, you're going to choose different trade-offs because your goals are different. So Adam says, what use cases aren't including scaling though? You aren't scaling now because you don't have any customers. So you're thinking about the wrong problems. Right now, you don't have money coming in the door. You're just trying to solve the problem of, I need to get money in the door. Once you've got money in the door and you're a product, now you have different problems. And you're still not scaling, right? You need to adapt the way that you do things to the problem that's in front of you now. And if you want to think ahead, if you got, if you want to plan ahead and build, so you should not build your architecture. I don't mean to make this a scaling and architecture decision. The one thing you need to optimize for, the one thing that is consistent throughout all of those different modes of development, throughout your whole project, whether you're a prototype, crossing the gap, or you're a product, or you're a legacy product, regardless of where you live on that spectrum of the software development cycle, the only thing that is consistent through that whole thing is change. So the only thing you need to plan for, scaling only lives in one chunk of that. Okay, because your problems in those other areas are different. Scaling only lives in one area. Okay, the only problem that lives in all of those areas is the problem of change. That you need to change from this mode to this mode to this mode to this mode, or maybe even back. Or you might get to a scaling position and then all of a sudden you're your revenue falls out and you need to pivot. The only thing that's been consistent is that you need to change. So that's why. Because we're not scaling a product. All I'm trying to do is build out a thing that'll handle 3 emails a day. Oh, I had a whole bunch of comments and I missed a bunch. I'm going to try and get caught up on these. I love that comment about code. I've written some of the best and some of the worst code ever. Why not use Puppeteer Playwright? Again, we could, but that's not our goal today. I post the replays of my lives on my YouTube, links in my bio. Pandit Animation says, really enjoy the content. Awesome. Adam, how do you avoid being banned or blocked? I use third-party services when I'm crawling something like LinkedIn. If I want LinkedIn stuff, I'm using something like Bright Data or some other service, Apify. Yeah, and I let them worry about it. I delegate the problem. You could spend $10 on Bright Data and get a massive amount of data. If you got $10 to spend, you can do tons of stuff. Real Reviews says, literal billionaire, write a for loop right now without Googling the syntax. That's funny. I don't write code. I get Cursor to do it. Fastest way to learn programming, just start. Pick something easy, Python, JavaScript. Doesn't matter. Find something, build a game, jump in on an open source project. Freaking Adil says, are you speaking? I can't hear. I think, am I being heard? Just drop a comment in there if my audio is coming through. I wouldn't imagine we'd have 50 people in here if I couldn't be heard. So it might just be you. Join late. What's Firecrawl? Yeah, we just tied into this. So back to my use case. I was just getting caught up. Straight up flipping. If you hang out for 2 minutes, I'll explain what we're trying to do here. I just wanted to get caught up on my comments. Adam says, fair enough. I mean, there isn't a solution. I will attempt to market. There isn't a solution. I will attempt to market that doesn't scale. I think I know what you're saying. I just think you sort of, we'll talk about this in a different live, but there's different modes of development. So, I mean, you should be thinking about scaling from the perspective of, you should be thinking of, how do I change my project later when I need to scale? That's what you should be thinking. Don't worry about the scaling problem right now. Worry about the change problem right now. It's all about learning how logic works. Syntax comes after. Okay, everybody can hear me. Right on. Okay, we're good. We are good. Man. So this is the problem. This is what we're working on. Straight up flipping ass. Join late. What's Firecrawl? So we're at the point in my workflow where I've got a personal assistant that includes ChatGPT within a workflow. So that workflow actually lives over here in this scenario. We'll save the changes to this. That's fine. Let me see. This scenario is called, I lose my folders when there we go. So personal assistant, this one here. So we've got actually a few, if I go back, there's 1, 2, 3 that we started working on. So the first one is this one. And basically the ChatGPT part is this right here. This chunk right in here. And it's got a custom action, a function, because it's an OpenAI assistant that allows it to reach out to a second scenario. That's this scenario right here. This one. Yeah, website crawler. We're sort of tinkering with these because we're making some adjustments here. And I just thought, well, we'll do it on the live because that's fun. So the personal assistant, I get a booking email, and if it looks like it's a business domain, then my ChatGPT assistant will fire off this next scenario that's going to go out and it's going to crawl their website and grab some data. The eventual goal from this, is that we're going to take that data and we're going to plug it into yet another custom assistant. That's the goal, so that every one of my customers has their own custom assistant that I can query about their business. And then later on, when we have a meeting, when the transcript comes in, that can also be indexed. Everything will just be in that one custom assistant for that customer. It's sort of practical because it's going to save me a bit of time, but I thought it'd be fun to build, to wire all these pieces together, because this is going to require, just for the first part of this task, it's going to require 3 scenarios here. One is going to handle, and my requirements for me are, when I interface with this personal assistant, when you use ChatGPT, you just go to chatgpt.com, right? So that's cool. You get this nice interface. You can talk with your custom GPTs and all that. For my scenario, I want to interact with my custom assistant via email. I want to be able to forward an email in and then get an email response. So that's where we're going with this. And then eventually Slack also. So I can ask my personal assistant for something about a business. It can reach out and grab the data that it needs and then send it back to my Slack so I can interact with it that way. It's not going to be local. This is all in the cloud. We're using make.com and OpenAI. So today we're working on this piece right here. This one right here, because we tied into another tool last week that kind of crapped the bed. It didn't do a great job. So that's the answer to your question. What is Firecrawl? My requirements for crawling are, I want to be able to send in a URL, just a URL, the website, suchandsuch.com, and then I want it to go get everything. But I want to have some conditions around that. So let me just pull up my other job here, because I am logged in. And if I look at my my playground, perfect flow funnels, that's the one. That's Mrs. Jones's site. So let's pull this up here. So if we look at this, we go into this job, the activity logs, playground. There's some cool stuff about this. They have a couple of cool things. If we grab this website right here and we go into playground, they have 3 different things that we can do. We can scrape a single URL. We can crawl a site, which has a few different cool options. Then they have one called map, and this is actually really slick. So what the map does, this is a brand new feature they just launched, and these folks seem like they've designed this. I'll bump that up a bit. I'm sorry that's so small. They've designed this so that this service is designed for use with LLMs, which is really cool. So when we run this map task, what it's going to do is it's going to run out to the website and try and get all of the URLs on that website it can find as fast as possible. So literally, if we run this, and it just takes a few, see, like, it didn't even take a second, and it went out and it grabbed all these URLs. Now they do have a caveat in their documentation that, like, it might miss a few, and then you can specify, like, if we want just the blog. Oh, my keyboard switched. I ended up with Armenian installed on my Mac for some reason. So if we take that same URL and we just want to search for blog, it'll just run out and just grab anything that has blog in it. And it's like, it's pretty slick. So here's the short list of stuff that says blog. Oh no, actually, that doesn't look like it worked. It does say beta, so. But this is fine, even just getting that list back, I think is super cool. Let me get my editor up over here, that one right there. Because what's cool about this is, just open a new file so we can have a look at those results. It doesn't know this is JSON. Let me fix that. Now let's format that. Okay. So basically, this is the list of URLs that we got. It did pull blog, but it also pulled this. It wasn't supposed to pull all this other stuff, which is like, it's fine. But the cool thing is that it just went out and got a list right away. And what's nice about this is, from like an automation perspective, we can filter through these really quickly now. So this is really cool. Like, it's just such a cool service. And then back on the crawl side, one of the things that makes this work for our workflow is that we can specify, okay, I only want to get 100 pages, max depth, which is like how much recursive. So if If I find links on the home page, how deep do you want me to go into those links, right? Do you want me to exclude stuff? So I don't want like store, product, and then exclude tags, include tags, which is kind of cool. But one of the things that's a requirement, again, back to my use case, is I need for them to support webhooks, which they do. Because what a webhook is going to allow us to do is give us updates about the job. So when we fire this crawl job off to this service, it's going to go do its thing, and it's pretty fast. Let's just run the job. It's pretty cool. We'll run this crawl job on Mrs. Jones's site here. And it starts pulling they even have a streaming option, which is slick. So we can get the response back in Markdown or JSON, which is like fantastic. It's got like headers, OG data. This is really quite slick. I think the JSON response might make more sense if you wanted to know, if you wanted to grab the title or image. I think this is probably just about my new favorite service, and I haven't even really used it yet. But it's going to pull up to 100 pages off this site. Hopefully it's excluded all the product ones. We'll go check that out in a minute. But with the API, when we call this with a webhook, they've got, I think they said 4 different webhook options, so that it's going to give us, it's going to ping back to us when it's completed with the crawl, either crawl started, crawl.page, crawl completed, or crawl failed. And so if we go back and look at our graph here, right, this is our webhook point right here. This is the crawl job. Let me just change that. It says scrape. Should actually be crawl. Crawl site. So we're going to start this crawl job. And then one of our requirements is that once that job is finished, once that job is completed, it's got to come back and hit our other scenario that's going to handle that data. Now, we haven't got there yet. That's where we left off last week. We were just tying into this crawler. And with limited success, I found out today the other service we're using has been trying to crawl that same site all week, every 15 minutes, eating up all my credits. So not the end of the world. But I messaged them and said, hey, you got a rogue job. You got this rogue crawler that we spun up a week ago, and it's still going, and I don't know how to shut it off. All right, so let's see. Let's see what we can do here. I've already got, so we need to tie back into this scrape webhook. Just going to make sure that my jobs are, my scenarios are named accordingly. So the first one is my personal assistant scenario. That's this one here. It takes an email. And then this one here is the website crawler. We've got it kind of broken right now, but we'll fix it up. That's the response. All right, we've got a few things we need to do to get this working. What we were doing is we were testing this out on that same site just by setting a variable. And what we want to do, right, I remember where we left off. Okay, let's come back over here. Because what we need to do, whoop, can't see what I'm doing here. Too many things open. All right, so what we need to do here is grab the API reference from Firecrawl, and we need to make some adjustments. Because last week, if you go back, you can check this out. If you missed last week, we spent some time learning about APIs, all the different parts, what the different methods were called, the verbs, post, get, so on and so forth. Then learning a little bit about headers. This is a JWT. Whenever you see that authorization bearer, it's just like an expiring token, or you can think of it as an API key. So we learned about the headers and different request types. And then we learned that with this post request type, when we have a post request, that just means we need to send in data, right? So, and we're doing that in make.com. But in order to do that, we need to take this chunk of data, this body, and we need to set it up in our, we need to configure it for our use specifically. So we'll come back to the URL. We'll come back to that because we're going to pass that in dynamically. Exclude paths. These are going to be the same parameters that we just configured on the website when we ran that test job. We toggle our options here. So we set a limit, max depth. We set some exclude paths. And then we have a few other options. So we're going to pick and choose the options that we want from this so that instead of running this job on the Firecrawl website, we can trigger it from our make.com scenario. So let's get in there right now and figure this out. I don't want 1,000. I definitely don't want 1,000. I only want like maximum. Because this is serving the purpose of doing a little bit of research for me prior to a call with a client I've never met. My particular process is I'll go out and I'll look at their site. I'll read the blog a little bit. I want to understand what it is I'm walking into when I go into this call. So I want this to do the same thing and just fast track some of that process. Give me the Coles notes. But not only that, once we start working together, then what I can do is I can talk to that GPT, that assistant that we've set up, and I can start asking questions. I can send in meeting notes. I can add planning documents. We can start to make this more evolved and more, I guess you say, smarter, attuned to our needs over time. I think I did the exclude paths wrong on this. I think it wants wildcard expressions. So yeah, we'll do that here. We'll set this up properly. So in here, we don't want store. Oh. The star, the /star means anything that starts with store slash. This wildcard just means anything. That's star. And then we'll do the same thing with product. So I don't want the store and I don't want the products if there's any of that in there. If we go back and look at those URLs, we might want to just scan these really quick and be like, I definitely want the blogs. I might say, not the funnels but if I excluded funnel, I guess I could do /funnel star. Maybe I could do that. I don't know if it has full regex support. It seems like maybe. Josh asks, is the advantage over Perplexity search that this is more personalized? No, I don't think so. I'm just building it kind of for fun. But this is the second time that Perplexity's come up, and I've only been in Perplexity a tiny bit. So I think that's my cue that I need to get over there and start playing with it more. The other side of one of my issues is that I'm also cheap. So it's just another $20 subscription that I need to set up. But you know what? That's just how it goes. I think I might just need to go do it. The flip side of this, though, is that this is something that's going to incorporate into my day-to-day. So if I can set up an assistant in Perplexity to do the same thing, that's fine. I don't care where it lives. And the workflows, I guess this serves multiple purposes. One is that we're talking about sort of using this as an opportunity to sort of talk about how to get into setting up scenarios and wiring them together in make.com. And this could be in Zapier or whatever else, but I guess we're just kind of showing off that you can trigger these with emails. You can trigger these with webhooks. You can tie these scenarios together, one into the other, and incorporate ChatGPT. So we're sort of taking it as an opportunity to build this out as an example, as a bit of a tutorial, if it's helpful to others. And in the end, if I get to use this for my own purposes, then that's fine too. But yeah, I keep hearing about, I've dabbled in Perplexity a little bit. Generally, when I hear people talk about, usually when I hear about other models, I'm like, oh, somebody's like this, go on Hugging Face and download Llama. It's just so much better. What's the new one? Everybody's talking about DeepSeek V3 or something like that. It's like, for my purposes, the stuff that I'm actually having AI do, I don't need a smarter model. I don't need more tokens. The stuff I'm doing, half the stuff I'm doing 3.5 will do. I'm not giving AI really hard problems. I'm giving my AI really easy problems 9 times out of 10. But if Perplexity's really good at doing a web search or being able to scrape and just target and find the data from a customer website that I want, then absolutely I would be interested in that, because that saves me time. That probably saves me, that could save me up to 8 hours a week, and that's significant. So I think we're setting up the JSON. Let's go back to that. So if you're not familiar with JSON, I've done some videos on this. They're earlier in my, you can go back in my profile and find some of that stuff. JSON's really simple. It looks complicated and it's picky in that the structure needs to be specific. If you miss a comma or you don't close one of the objects properly, it's going to have a problem. And so we use specific editors that show us when those errors are present so that we know there's a problem, because writing this without that would be impossible. So we'll post in the URL later. We're going to exclude these paths. Include, I'm not worried about. I think I can just exclude that parameter. Max depth, I'm going to say 2. Ignore sitemap. I want it to use that. I'm not worried about those. The webhook, we are going to put this in. And then scrape options. I'll stick with Markdown for now, but I might want that JSON later. I'm not worried about custom headers. I'm not going to worry about tags for now. I think those are optional. Only main content is fine. Remove base 64 images true. So you can embed images in what's called base 64, just a format that's safe for rendering text behind the scenes that will actually show up as an image, base 64. But they're usually these massive gobs of data in the page, so that's going to rip those out. Mobile, false, and wait for 1, 2, 3 seems kind of silly. What was the default in the page there? The wait for, they set to 1 second, so we'll do the same. We'll say 1 second. So we'll say 500 milliseconds. I wonder if that's just, it's waiting. I wonder if that's the amount of time it's waiting for the page to finish loading. So that's what our JSON looks like. So we'll replace our old JSON. We'll get back over to our make.com scenario. It's going to be this one here. We've got a couple of changes we need to make because we had this set up to work with another system before. Now, I've already, oh no, see, I've got the old URL in there. So we'll come back to that. We'll put this in here. Make.com is going to rip out all of the formatting. In URL, I'm going to set that URL in there for now. We'll need to change that later. And the other thing we're going to need to do, we've got our bearer token in place. We need to update this URL because this is the wrong service. We're not using that other service anymore. We're using this one, Firecrawl. Firecrawl sounds like a spell, and sounds like a 3rd level mage spell in D&D or something. Firecrawl. Okay. So I think that's right. All we want to know now. Oh, and then we want the webhook. So let's go do that. Javid Davin says, "What is this? We're building. We're building on a few scenarios in Make.com for a personal assistant that I've been working on. A personal assistant, and a personal AI assistant that I can interface with via email and Slack. Hey, Mel. Glad to see you. June Aid Salim says, where do I learn all of this? I would say you could find a course on YouTube or something. I post all my lives back on YouTube if you want to go back to my earlier lives and get caught up to where we are today. Mel, I'm using OBS and Restream. Restream just they TikTok broke things for everybody when they released their TikTok live studio for Windows or whatever. You couldn't get stream keys anymore, but now Restream has the ability to issue stream keys again, and so you can connect your OBS again. Yeah. YouTube channel, go to my bio. There's a link in there in my link tree. You can just jump on the YouTube. I post all of my lives. I've only done a few, but I post them. I'll post it tonight or tomorrow. Okay, so we got our third scenario. This is the one. It doesn't do anything now. This is the third scenario that's going to receive the webhook from the scrape, the crawl job, and eventually it's going to push that data into some kind of database or virtual our OpenAI assistant vector store or something like that. Right now, we'll be perfectly happy just if it works. So we're going to test it out. I think we need to redetermine the data structure because that will have changed. So I'll turn that on. Redetermine data structure. Now it's listening for a webhook. I'm going to copy the address again, go back to my other scenario, and I need to paste that webhook URL into where it says webhook. I could actually make this a variable, and that might be smart. I'll paste it in there for now. We'll regret this later. So I think that's everything that we need. We're not going to trigger this. I've got this set up right now. My webhook is shut off. My first step in my workflow is just setting a variable. We're manually setting the variable just so we can manually test this out. We'll actually set up the webhook again once we know all of these pieces are working. So what we can do is just run this now. If we run this, it's got my API key stored in one of these. That one's the actual website URL. We won't worry about that. Actually, if I go back in, this URL I want to be, I don't want it to be URL. I want it to be website URL. That'll make this a little bit more maintainable because the first module is going to change. The second module is going to stay the same. So that should work. Now, I need everybody on the live to cross your fingers. We're going to run this. And when this runs, it should kick off a job. What happened? I need to run. Oh, I'm going to run once. That's what I need. Run once. Thanks, Julie. Appreciate it. All right. That kicked off the job. We have a look at that. We got a 200 response from our API request. Let me bump that up. It looks a little small. We got a 200 response. 200 means okay. And if we go over here, successfully determined, that means the job is already finished. And we can now go in. We can now go in and see what that data looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlink these modules. Unlink that. Unlink this. We're going to try this again. We'll test this out again one more time. But what I want to do is, if I put this in the middle, then when we come in here, the reason I put that in the middle is so that when I click on that and click in here, now I can have access to that structure that came in. So there's our data. Success, type, ID, data one, metadata. Let's run this. I'm going to run this manually. So whenever you're testing, when you have a webhook as a first node of your workflow, if you hit run this scenario, it will just listen. I'm going to wait for new data. So now it's waiting. So now we can run this one more time. Now we can do this one more time. I'm going to run this scenario, fire off that job again. And that already came in. So we can see the data that came in, our output bundle. Success was true. Type is crawl started. Oh, we need to wait. Run it again. Because I forgot. It's going to be called multiple times. Now what we need to do is put in a filter. Crawl page. Run this again. Let's do that right now. We need to put in a filter because we're going to be getting all of these different crawl events, and we only want the finished one. Because if we go back over to the documentation, see, I already forgot. If we go back over to the documentation and we look at the webhook section, they're going to send in 4 possible events. They're going to send us a webhook when the crawl starts. Then they're going to send us an event for when they crawl each page, which would be cool. We could do it that way. Maybe we should do crawl page. That's probably the right way to do this. Then there's crawl completed or crawl failed. So what I'm currently thinking is, I was originally thinking if we did crawl completed, maybe they'll give us all of the data. But I don't know yet. When the crawl completed job comes in, will they give us all of the data or not? Maybe not. But now that I think about it, if we handle the crawl page event, then we can just process each of those pages as they come in. That's actually a little smarter way to do this. So what we should do now is put a filter in, because this webhook is going to fire a bunch of times, but we only want to process those crawl.page events. We've just determined that. So I'll click on this little filter right here. Looks like they've already put one in there. I'm going to say set up a filter. Status equals succeeded, and type equals crawl.page. Oh, needs an L. I'm going to say success is true. Set two conditions in there. So only succeeded jobs if the status, the success value of the webhook that comes in equals true, and then the type of the webhook is crawl.page, then the rest of this workflow will run. Let's run this again. Wait for new data. The job's probably already finished. What I want to do is I want to see what the data looks like. So let's run this one more time. Run it again. We've crawled Mrs. Jones' site several times now. Now that data come in. This is what. So that crawl started. It ignored that. Wait for new data. We have to trigger it again because we're sort of in debug mode. We haven't published this. There we go. That ran the whole time now. So we can see there's a little bubble on each of these. We set up that webhook to listen, and now it has caught, if you will. It has been triggered by that third-party system. And we can see in the data, let me bump that up a little bit. If we go in and have a look now, the output from our webhook node is, we've got some data in here, one item, and we've got the option between the markdown, the raw HTML, and then there's some metadata on the page, which is cool. So we have the metadata, so we could be, if we're working with any system now where we can store the web page data, what we can do is store some of that metadata, including if there's data in here about maybe if we want to have the title, if we want to utilize an image that was on that page. I got a couple questions here. Adam says, I got to try this live stuff out, but I never loved having people watch me code. You know what's interesting about TikTok, just as sort of a little digression into lives. I'm a shy person. The idea of broadcasting my face on the internet is daunting. But what I will say is, the interesting thing about doing lives on TikTok is that, while I don't necessarily know everybody that's here, I've met some of you before several times. And so building up, meeting people who have similar ideas, who ask great questions or contribute knowledge, it feels very community building in a internet kind of way. Meeting some of the same people and then connecting and maybe having conversations offline. Or I like to think of my TikTok lives as more like a trade show. I'm doing a trade show on this, and if it interests you, stop by, have a chat, and if not, I mean, you'll scroll. And so it's really cool in that way. It's still a bit daunting, still a little terrifying. Like I think about doing it live on, turning the live button on for Facebook or something, and I'm like, no, maybe I'll do that next time. On TikTok, it's pretty good. So we're in an interesting spot with this. We've got some data. Now we've got a few more things. Now we're at a place where I need to make some decisions. What are we going to do with the data that's come in? Lady K, what is my purpose? To butter toast. Oh. Junaid says, mind asking, what do you do by profession? I am a software engineer by trade. My background's in software engineering. I've been in software for ever. I got into software in the late 90s by accident because it was the least. I never took computers seriously, and this is serious. I never took computers serious until, even though I did really well in computers in high school, I was kind of I really liked typing, the typing tutors, and when we were supposed to be doing stuff in computer science class, we were building choose your own adventure games and animating them in Turbo Pascal. Um, and so, and then one day people were paying us to build websites, which still is weird to me. And the internet has just kind of exploded since then. And I have been lucky. I've had a very fortunate career. I bounced around all kinds of different stuff. I've worked with tons of amazing people, and I still continue to learn from others. I'm really grateful for all of that. And I've been doing this, yeah, like I said, about professionally about 25 years. The first thing I programmed was in BASIC in in the mid 80s. My brother had a TRS-80. I don't know if anybody remember what that is. The Tandy Radio Shack 80. Hey, yeah, best wishes. Thanks from Ontario. Right on. Thanks for stopping in. TRS-80 was this keyboard in a box. You could put these little cartridges in it. They had little games and stuff. And my very first programming experience was we spent 3 days. We had the book with a bunch of games, and we spent 3 days typing Pong. Me and my brothers. We spent 3 days typing it into this thing. We couldn't shut it off because we didn't have the tape drive, and we had to leave it on. And then we typed it in, and then we probably spent another. I'm sure we spent 3 more days like finding all the typos. We got Pong running. I think we played it for 10 minutes, and then we shut it off. It was like a week's worth of work. And the only other thing I remember about the TRS-80 is my brother had a game called Dungeons of Daggerth that he played a lot. And there were shortcuts for all the commands. It was a keyboard-based game, so if you wanted to move, you went move space enter, and it moved ahead one. Move MF, I don't remember. And then if you wanted to turn, T space R enter. And so he had it macroed out. So all I would hear was like that was what the sound was of him playing this silly game. Dungeons of Daggerth. Anyway, Adam says, my first computer was a ZX80, pre the TRS-80. That's intense. Matthew says, I'm an analytic dev SQL Power BI ETL. I want to be better in Python, but hard to start. I do a lot of Python. If you like Python, I would look into Jupyter Notebooks. I mean, there's lots of stuff you can do in Python. But if you use VS Code, if you just name your, if you just put .ipynb as the extension of your thing, your VS Code or your cursor will turn into a Jupyter Notebook editor. And then you can do, if you've ever played with IPython, it's like IPython, but you get these nice little cells you can work with, and you can do graphing, and it's amazing. Yeah. I did Python for about, I started in Python in about 08. I was looking at this new thing had come out called Django. They were at 0.9. There's this specific branch of Django. It wasn't even merged into master. It was 091. New Forms Admin, it was called, and it had this nice back-end thing where you could edit. You could interact with the database using a back-end form. It was magical. And that's how I ended up choosing Python over Ruby. Yeah, Jupyter Notebook. I can show you if you're interested in just tinkering. If you get VS Code, let me just pull up a brand new cursor here, and if we just pop open a brand new one, I haven't even saved this file. I'm using Cursor, so this is Cursor, but VS Code will do the same thing. And basically, what you can do is just save the file. We'll just save this. We'll just save it on my desktop, I guess. We'll just call it test IPYNB, and it turns it into, used to be called IPython notebooks. Now they're called Jupyter notebooks. And as soon as you do that, it'll turn it into this nice little IPyNB format. Let me see. It's kind of, oh, I got to rename that. 1 second. Because it it put a .I at the end. I don't know why I did that. Give me a second here. I'll just go onto my desktop and fix it. Do I have a terminal? No, that's not what I want. Sorry about that. We're taking a detour. We're taking a detour through my messy Mac here. Desktop. I don't know why I put that silly extension on there. That was... Okay. Yes, I do want to change it. Now if we open that file, cancel, bring that back. Okay, get rid of that. Not that. Okay, not that. Open. There we go. Test. Now this is a Jupyter notebook. You get these cells where you can just play with Python. And so from here, you know, the most basic Python like print hello, right? And if you hit shift enter, it's going to ask me for my Python environment. So you might have to fumble through this a little bit. I'm just going to pick 3.9 because that's what I have installed. And so now this will run as an interactive, and it says, hello, this is the interactive element of sort of like IPython does this, but it's a notebook. So the cool thing about this is I've got two different cells that I can use. One is called Markdown and one is called Code. So in Markdown, if you're familiar with the Markdown format, you can sort of write pseudo Markdown. Look at me go. You can sort of write, you know, list item 1, list item 2, paragraph, text. If I hit shift enter, it renders into text. So you can put images in here. So then you can just start playing with it. You can load up files. And this is fantastic because I'm using Cursor, which is like $20 a month for the basic package. I don't even type code. I don't even type anymore. I just dictate into my AI assistant and it writes all my code for me. And so if you're thinking about tinkering with code, this is a really great way to learn code. It's not to say that you can't write the code, but when I'm writing, I'm in projects. I'm working for one client right now. They're using Bootstrap, and they haven't used any modern JavaScript frameworks or whatever. They're just basically using like jQuery and Bootstrap. And I'm like, I haven't written Bootstrap in, I don't know, 10 years, 8 at least. I don't know, probably 10 years. And like, I don't remember any of the whatever. I don't have to learn the CSS because, you know, Claude or whatever knows the CSS. I know what I want out of it. I know what the project needs to look like, right? I know what the logic needs to be, what we need to connect to make the app work. I just don't write the code anymore, right? And the great thing about this is if we can set a variable here, just say like, you know, greeting equals hello. Execute that. It doesn't do anything unless we access it at the end. We can say greeting here and it'll print it out. But then I can also access it in the next one as well. So anything the nice thing about Jupyter Notebooks is any functions or variables that are defined earlier in any of the cells are accessible in any of the other cells. I use these every day. I use these every day for scripting. I use it for automation. I use it for DevOps. I use Jupyter Notebooks. And then I pretend to be a data scientist from time to time. So if you're interested in Python, definitely look into Jupyter Notebooks because they're super cool. That was a little detour. Oh, I got a bunch more questions. Bill says that's how a bunch of us OGs learned. Same thing for AI. You know, the one thing that's consistent about tech, you know, in all of my years, I guess, is it just constantly changing all the time, constantly. I make MVPs. Could you make a video that integrates custom GPT to N8 and REST API? Yep, that shouldn't be too hard. Been trying for 2 days. Okay, it'd be cool to see your use case just to make sure that the video was aligned with that. Matthew says, hard to start learning the syntax. I'm always searching for my word type of thing. The nice thing about Python is, for the most part, they try to keep it fairly straightforward. It should be, they have Pythonic ideas that like, it should mostly read like English. But again, I would, if you use Cursor or something like Claude or ChatGPT, like to spit out the Python for you, you can just say, hey, I want to do this, and it spits out some code, and then you can just study that and use that as a way to learn. I use Cursor to learn React, funnily enough. I mean, I understood how JSX worked, and I tinkered with it before, but not really gotten deep into it, and then I've been writing React for 6 months now. Janai says, just joined YouTube channel. Hey, appreciate that. This live will be up there. We're kind of on a bit of a detour right now, but I'm glad you're getting something out of it. Adam, need to watch this on the big screen. I hope everything's. This format is tricky. That's the only thing I struggle with on the vertical format. Like I really enjoy TikTok, but the vertical format makes things tricky sometimes. ZA says, "What education do you have in ML?" I am YouTube certified. I got my education. I got my education in AI in the same place I got my education for software engineering. I just continue reading the internet every day as much as possible. I look at my YouTube history, man. I must watch. I bet you I watch. Sometimes I think, geez, I must have watched 5 YouTube videos yesterday. I look back and there's like 50 YouTube videos in my history for like a single day. So I think the internet's out there. All the information's out there. It's just a matter of tinkering and exploring and trying things out. That's my whole career. I'm a generalist. I'm not formally educated in software. I did not go to university for software engineering, and I'm a generalist, which means which means I don't even read the documentation. If I get into an app and I push buttons and it does what I want, and it seems intuitive, then I'll use it. And if I struggle with it, I'll probably fight with it until I'm raging mad and sending you an angry email about how crappy your thing is. Then eventually I'll get into the documentation when I'm certain that it'll do what it is that I need to do. But I don't I don't deep dive into many things until I absolutely have to. My whole career, and I've been doing this for 25 years professionally. Well, the first few years we'll use that word professionally very loosely. They were paying me money, we'll say that. But I learned just in time, just enough. And if that's, honestly, I think that's a skill. I don't think you have to be that way in tech. I think if you just like one little slice of tech and you want to just focus on that one thing, I think it's going to be harder to have a career in this industry because it's sort of like only knowing Microsoft Word and nothing else. If you don't know spreadsheets or MS Access or what's their thing called? Not slides, it's PowerPoint. Like if you don't know those other things, you kind of can't just know one thing in tech. You kind of have to know a bunch of things. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, the more things I can know just a little bit about. I'm not an ML expert. I'm not an AI expert. I'm not a make.com expert. I can make it do what I want 9 times out of 10 because I get it. Because I understand the logic. Not because I understand the interface, but because I know the loops I need to do. I know how to get the data out of things. I know how to transform things. I know how to use APIs because that's my background. Right? But I'm not an expert at any of these things. I'm a generalist. That means I just do lots of things a little bit. Ben says, what are your thoughts on a bachelor's of computer science? You know, I still think about going back and getting my my bachelor's. I've thought about that several times. I don't know that it's a degree hasn't, and especially in computer science, it hasn't meant as much. Like I think in the 90s, a degree in computer science maybe meant something, and it kind of was downhill from there. I don't have a degree. I only have experience. That being said, I don't get shortlisted on lots and lots of jobs because I don't have a bachelor undergrad degree. I don't get sure. I can't work for. I probably can't work for like a Microsoft or something because I just can't. I don't get shortlisted because it's, you know, there's lots of jobs. Can't get a government job, even though I got 25 years of experience. I've got 13 years of experience in AWS. I've worked with probably 80 of their services in production. But I couldn't work for the government of Canada because I don't have I don't have that undergraduate degree. So I've thought about it, going back and getting that, you know. I could probably consult with them, but I couldn't be like an employee, which is fine. I don't want to work there. Locals Dad, I do. Yeah, if you're looking for help with something, feel free to reach out to me. Just send me a message on my TikTok. Janai says, where to start? I'm analyzing data in the supply chain. Analyzing data is super fun. I'm not a data scientist. Again, check out Jupyter Notebook. Before you start analyzing data, I think about this in terms of the science of it, right? What is your thesis? What is the thing you think is true, or what is the question you're trying to answer? And then once you have that, then start navigating the data. If you don't have a goal, if you don't have a goal for what you're looking for, then you might just sort of meander around a little bit. But if you're like, I think there's a correlation between these two things, and then you can start working in that direction. It's Quiet Uptown says, so you're an autodidact? I guess so. I don't know what that word means. It's a great skill to be able to teach yourself. The word I use is generalist. That's what I consider myself. My friend would say, how does that go? There's an expression, something master of none. I can't think of how it goes now. Yeah, I meander all over the place. I get distracted, which is where we are right now. So let's talk about, I was actually going to do the iterator today. But looking at this now, I don't know that we need to. So jack of all trades, master of none. That's the one I was looking for. So that's sort of me. It's like, I used to fix printers, and now I sort of still look at it as like, I still fix printers, except they're just not printers anymore. And I happen to have written lots of software along the way. I always tell people I made a big mess the first half of my career. I spent the second half of my career like cleaning it up and learning how to build things properly. And so I think software still matters as much today as it ever has, because software still runs the entire internet. I know that all of our overlords want us to think that AI is going to take over and maintain everything, but it's not. I mean, not for a long time. The day that they flip that switch, it's going to be like there's going to be a rough patch there for a while as we go in and try and figure out what the heck went wrong. Because when you get into really, really big systems that require a lot of context, like I haven't worked at a job in the last 15 years where it did not take 2 years for me to it took me 2 years at every single one of those jobs to get to the point where it's like, okay, I think I know what's going on here. I think I know how all these pieces work. 2 years. So if you're on the business side of managing tech people or anything like that, keep that in mind when you bring people on. Give them some time to ramp up, because if you have any degree of complexity in your business, and even business in general, and businesses have lots of institutional knowledge about the way that they work, right? Specializations. I work with businesses where it's like, even though I've done research on their website, I'll look at their site, I'll read all their stuff, and I'm like, man, there's at least a couple of meetings here for me to get my head wrapped around what it is that you do. And I've come out of meetings where I've had clients where I've had 3 meetings with them, and I'm like, I still don't know what you do. I still don't understand your space, just because there's so much to it. Autodidact is someone who can teach themselves a subject or skill without the help of a teacher or formal education. I guess so. I sort of have done it out of necessity, because I have trouble staying on task sometimes. Let's get back to see if we can wire this up. So where are we at? We have successfully, we don't have this responding to a webhook. We've kicked this off manually, but it's scraping and it's kicking off this next workflow. So that's a great place to be in. So what I'm thinking is, we've got a couple of things that we should probably tie into next. I know that this URL has changed, so we should probably go and fix that, so that when our personal assistant gets that email, it will do the right thing. Then the other thing that it should do is, I think we want to be able to create that custom assistant, because we're at the place now where we're getting data from that crawl task into that third scenario, page by page, which is fine. And so if we can get that first scenario to create the assistant for that client, then if we can get the crawl task, when we get each of those pages, if those can also connect to that same assistant, that'd be huge. That'd put us in an amazing spot, because that would sort of wrap up. I mean, I know we're doing this on the TikTok live, so we're kind of working through this fairly piece by piece, step by step, and explaining all of the bits. But we're a few hours into this already, right? We've put quite a few pieces together, and it would be really cool to see them all sort of get to that spot. And then from there, wiring in that last email and then wiring in Slack, that's going to be fairly straightforward. This part's going to be tricky. This part's going to require a little bit of tinkering. Can we get this assistant created in a way that we can access it correctly when this data comes back in? That's going to be the fun bit. Okay, let's go have a look at that now. I'm going to jump back into that other scenario. So this is our first scenario that we worked on last week. Just a quick recap if you weren't here for that. There's four steps. Real simple. We've got a custom mail hook. That's this first one right here. So what this does is basically it receives an email. I don't automatically mail anything into my scenarios. I don't, or not everything. I don't automatically email everything into like ChatGPT, but I will auto forward certain things. And so in this particular case, this mail hook is just going to be an auto forwarder from a booking confirmation. Now we'll need to test this out at some point with a real booking confirmation. But once we get that booking confirmation that comes in, once that email comes in, then what that does, I think this must set a variable or something. We can look at that in a minute. And then when we get into the ChatGPT, this is actually not just ChatGPT, this is a custom assistant. So we're going to go have a look at that right now because we need to fix a couple things in there. But this custom assistant has a custom function. Let me pull that up. OpenAI developer. And if we jump in here, we get into the dashboard. Oh, yeah, there we go. Assistants. And that's my assistant right there. See if I can make that a little bit bigger. That doesn't seem too bad. I don't know how to close that drawer on the side. Adam says, I would be coding all of this stuff. And we could, but these are different paradigms. We're going to talk about that in a future live. We're going to talk about text strategy and understand higher order paradigms. And just a little sneak preview of that when I talk about higher order systems. What I mean is, like, you wouldn't get into the power business if you came to me, Adam, and you said, I want to build a power plant. I'm going to sell electricity to the people. And I'd be like, pretty sure that's been done. We're not there. I mean, there could be a strategy there. But what's your use case, right? Is this going to be a high-scale production system eventually, or something that you're going to sell? Is this a startup you're going to sell off? And even then, I might still start with something like this, because our goals are we're trying to get this up and running as quick as possible and learn some stuff at the same time. So this is what I call a high leverage activity. It's going to solve some of my problems today. It's also going to give me skills at the same time that I can apply towards the future, because as I shift and apply my skills from software into this new paradigm, I also get to apply that experience in this paradigm as well. So it's a high leverage activity. I could just write this in code. It wouldn't be as high leverage. So we've got a bunch of system instructions here. They're pretty basic instructions. We'll come back to that. The thing we need to do is we've got one function here. We talked about functions last week. I'll just summarize them again if you're not sure. If you're using custom GPTs, what they have called actions, which is if you define an action, you're basically giving your GPTs like superpowers. You're giving them the ability to delegate a task. And in the back end in OpenAI assistants, they call it custom functions. And the function basically comes with a schema. It's a definition. We're looking at JSON again. And our description is that this function will take the URL or domain of a website and it will return the summary. We're actually going to adjust this and we'll trigger a crawl task on that website. What this instruction does, so we've named it summarize website. It's probably a bad name. It should be called crawl website, but that's fine. We'll leave it there for now. The description here tells the LLM, it tells our assistant when to call this, when do I use this function? And then the rest of this definition says what parameters does the function take. So there's one parameter and it's the URL, the domain or the URL of the website to summarize. So the LLM, in this case, OpenAI or ChatGPT, will look at this and say, okay, I have access to this summarize website function. And it will crawl a website with a URL. So then what we do in our instructions is we go back and we say, when you are provided with the email of a customer from a new appointment confirmation, if the domain of that email is a business domain, extract that domain on its own and use the summarize website function to extract the details about that customer. So that's in our custom instructions. So we've given this assistant the ability to reach out into the world. And that's what triggers, that gets triggered here and kicks off the next scenario. Now these scenarios aren't connected, so they run independent of each other. We just happen to know for a fact that we changed the URL of that second scenario. Matter of fact, we don't even have it hooked up, so let's do that right now. We're going to delete that module. That's fine. I think we can get rid of this, and I think we can get rid of that. We'll just clean up a little bit while we're here. We're going to delete this. It's going to give me a warning and say that this module is referenced by another module. That's fine. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to set up the custom webhook. And I think I can choose website summarizer webhook. We'll understand what the structure looks like because we used that last time. I'm going to hit OK. Now I need to go in and fix this because it's referencing a module that doesn't exist anymore. We'll fix that. That's why I set the variable here, this website URL. I set that in the second module so that I only had to fix that in one place. And the last thing we want to do is make sure that we send a response. And I'm just going to use webhooks response 200. That's it. So then that way, when this does get called by our custom assistant, what happens is it's going to be expecting a response in order for it to move on and do. It's not. Lots of times they'll wait for 30 seconds or something before moving on. We don't want to waste the time, or we want it to be fairly quick, so we'll just issue that response. And we could do that right away. So now this should be in a good spot. We'll grab that address, XGVW. We'll go back to our assistant. We'll go back to this function, and we need to make sure that where's that? Oh, no, because it's in the other one. Yeah, that's right. We have to go back to our first scenario. Every time I do this, I forget how it works. Because we're using a custom assistant in OpenAI, how this works is we're calling that OpenAI custom assistant right here in our first workflow. Because we have a function defined, when we open up this node, as soon as it connects to that assistant, my assistant, it knows that we have a function there called summarize website. We just set that up. So what the make.com node will do, which is great, is it will listen for when ChatGPT, our OpenAI assistant, makes the function call, and it will call that URL for us. That's how everything wires together. We can see that the URL stayed the same, which is great. Now let me just diagram that really quick, because I think it was just because that part seems confusing. Okay, so how this works is, if you think about, we have this node. This is our original node in make.com. We'll make it purple. It calls an OpenAI assistant. We'll make this one green. And we'll say that this is ChatGPT, or this is our OpenAI assistant. Now our assistant can return a couple of different response types, okay? Normally when you make a call to OpenAI, when you do a completion, it just gives you a response, okay? Whoop, response. So if this is our make.com scenario, if you use a ChatGPT node in make.com, maybe that one should be green too, and it calls our custom assistant, and our assistant gives us a response, that response just goes back to, let's see if I can do this. It just goes back to make.com as a response, just like that. However, there's a cool feature that we are utilizing in our scenario right here with this function, and it works like this. In our case, we're calling make.com. Paste this back in here. Okay. It's calling the OpenAI assistant. And the assistant has decided that it needs to call a function. So instead of a response, we'll say, I don't know if there's a good thing here for function. Let's use that one. Call function. And then what happens there, because it didn't give us back just a text response, it said call function. What happens is make.com sees that response. It gets that response back from OpenAI, and then the next thing it does is it calls the URL, if that makes sense. It's expecting a URL that it's gonna reach out to. URL is gonna be diamond. I'm just making these up as I go. They don't make sense. I'm just trying to make this make sense. This is whimsical. Mrs. Jones turned us on to this tool last week, and man, it's fantastic. It's great. So this happens to be, I'm actually going to make this a circle, because this is our other make.com scenario right here. This is a whole scenario. Make it purple. Other scenario. And then this ends up back as a result in our calls the URL. Yeah, basically like that, more or less. That's how it works. This ends up being our response here. So that's the delegation part. If you just call ChatGPT from make.com as a completion, or even an assistant, you call it, you get a response, the response goes back to your make.com node, or however you want to think of that. Okay? Something like that. But if you call make.com OpenAI assistant and it decides it needs to call a function, in this case we're calling website summarizer, it returns, instead of returning a text response, it returns a response that indicates that you need to call a function. And then make.com recognizes that, and because we have a URL registered for that function, change that color to gray, it's going to call that. That URL happens to be our other scenario, and then that scenario is what is returning the response. And actually, if I have this correct, I think That doesn't make sense. It actually goes like this. Our other scenario actually returns it back to OpenAI, ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT returns a normal response. And I could take 5 minutes and fix this diagram, but if that makes sense. By the time it comes out of this call function, hits another scenario which calls, or make.com recognizes we need to call a function. It calls that URL, which happens to be another scenario. That response ends up back in ChatGPT. And then from there, we get a proper response back in our original scenario. That's a lot of steps, but that's what's happening here. When we set up this URL, if you just call an assistant, you just get a response. But if ChatGPT returns a response that says, I need to call this summarize function, make.com will recognize that. And because we have this URL registered, it will call that and it expects a response from that. And then that goes back into ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT gives us a proper response, which is super cool. That allows us to give more and more functionality to an OpenAI assistant. And you can do this in your ChatGPT, your custom GPTs as well. They call them actions over there. And you just plug a URL in. So you can just plug a make.com scenario webhook URL directly into a custom GPT. And now it can start to do cool stuff. All right. I went over that a couple times. I hope that was clear, because it's a little bit confusing. In my diagram, I don't think made it any better. But that's okay. We'll just keep going. We'll just keep going. Okay. So now we've got this wired in. We've made sure that the URL is correct. That seems fine. I want to test this. I want to test this out and see if it works. We went into our OpenAI assistant and fixed the, adjusted a few things. We went into our scenario, made sure that that URL for that one function was correct. Let me just think about this for a second. I want to test this. So I want to send an email in. It should kick off that job, scrape the site. Then if we make this webhook listen, I think if we make this webhook listen and we send the email, that should do it. Then the next thing we would want to do is create the personal assistant. I don't know if we're going to get to that today. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get to that today, but that will be the next step, I think. Adding in another function that's going to allow us to create an OpenAI assistant. That's actually going to kick off another workflow, which is pretty cool. But let's test this right now. That seems fine. This is the website crawler. That seems fine. I'm going to save this. I'm going to enable it. So that's listening now. This webhook is live. That's the second scenario. This one here. That's now live. I'm also going to go back to our first scenario. That one is also live. So I can send that an email. Or we can just do this. Actually, before we make that one live, I'll just put that one in listening mode. So it's going to listen to a single email. And now I'll go into our third scenario. And I'm going to make this one live as well. This one doesn't do anything other than just receive the webhook. We're just testing it out. That's okay. So we're going to wait for new data. Let me just pull open my, I got to get into my email here. Just give me a second. Hope everybody's doing great. Happy New Year to everyone. Let me see if I can find the email that we sent things to. I just got to find that webhook email. I think it's in hooks. No, This was a week ago. Do you know how many emails I get in a week? It's incredible. That's the one there. Copy that address. New email. All right, we'll just do this together here. That's the hook address. I'm going to say new meeting confirmed. We're going to pick a domain. Let's use... We're just going to pretend. We're going to use Mrs. Jones. We're going to pick on Mrs. Jones. Not even here. That's okay. She volunteered a domain last time, so we'll borrow it. Your meeting with... We'll just say hello at this domain. Oh, you have to take that out of there. We're just testing this. This is not what the actual email looks like. We're just testing it out. Your meeting with is confirmed for January 7th at, I don't know, 3 p.m. Send this off. I'm going to do this off screen so we can watch this together. So we're going to check the first scenario. I just sent it. Should come in any second, unless I got the email wrong. If I got the email wrong, it won't work. That's a possibility. We'll give it a couple more seconds before we bail on it. There it is. All right. ChatGPT should now fire off the next thing. So we'll go watch this one for a minute. ChatGPT is doing its thing. I should have put the second webhook in now. There we go. And the job came in. So that's all I wanted. Oh, we've got to make that wait again because that was just our initial task. Okay, so I know everything's wired together now. I know all of that was in demo mode. All of that was in like testing mode. But that confirms I sent the email. The personal assistant made the correct choice of what to do with that new inbound email. It's triggered that scraping job. That scenario, went through and kicked off a third-party crawl site task using the new fancy Firecrawl we just decided to use. I just found this morning. So excited. So that job kicked off fine. We wired in the webhook to our third scenario, and we've got a filter in place so that we can handle each of the pages that comes in. Somebody just come in and said, "What is this I need to know?" I hope that explains it. I hope you were here for that part. We're building my personal assistant for fun. I just sent an email in and it kicked off a task that crawled a client's website. And now what we need to do is we need to do something with that data. So I think what I want to do here, I said I was going to do one more scenario, but I think actually what we can do is we look at the output from this one here. Oh, look at that. It pulled the domain out of, I obviously have a little more training to do. If you look at the result from my ChatGPT, we have a little bit of work on my assistant to do, but it says, I've extracted the domains from the email provided, and it pulled my domain out of there as well. I wonder if it triggered two different jobs. That would be funny. That's exactly how AI can fail you in comical ways. But I think what I can do is on the web scraping job, I need to figure out a way. This is the problem we have right now, is I know I need to create this vector database. And what I need to do is, you can just arbitrarily create it. I mean, if you go into assistance, OpenAI assistance, you can go in here and under storage, and you can just create vector store in here. And then you can just start arbitrarily attaching stuff, which is pretty cool. And then you can attach those vector stores to your OpenAI assistants. And we can do this all programmatically through make.com. It's getting a little bit more complicated. Like a simpler tool might make sense if there's a tool out there. If you use something like a VoiceFlow, you can just give VoiceFlow the domain of a website, and it will go out and auto crawl that site and build a knowledge base. And I sort of want that. I sort of want that, but I want a little bit more flexibility in terms of how I can interact with that. And now the more I talk about VoiceFlow, I'm like, I wonder if it makes sense just to build this out in VoiceFlow. I mean, it was fun building this in make.com because we're learning, right? We're trying out, we're learning about the different nodes and how to wire these pieces. We're learning about webhooks and how to wire those things together. But when I think about it, I think about managing vector stores and stuff. It's not so bad, but it could get fairly complicated. I think my goal here is that I want to be able to communicate with this system via email. Is my primary, that's my primary goal, is that I have a personal assistant that I can just email and it knows already what's going on. And I don't know if in a system like VoiceFlow, I know that they have an API, but one of my requirements is after I have a meeting, there's a really fantastic feature of like, I know there's all these AI meeting note takers out there. I just realized just a couple days ago that if you enable transcripts, if you use, I use Google products. And so if you have a meeting in Google Meet and you enable recording and transcript, it sends you a beautiful transcript at the end of the meeting. And that's exactly what I want. It's got the speakers laid out nicely. And so when I get that in, when that comes into my email, I want it to automatically forward into the same somewhere. And I also want that to go into the database for that customer specifically. That's my requirement. And it won't necessarily stop there. I mean, I could think of more stuff. As I start to do planning with different clients, start loading business process documents, maybe even potentially internal documents, some of my processes and systems into the same assistant, even probably automatically, and maybe even some documents that are specific to an industry or something, processes and whatnot, or strategies that make sense for that particular thing. Lots of businesses I work with don't need the fundamental stuff will sort of start there. And then we start talking like high level strategy. We'll start to get personalized that way. Most businesses still need the same foundation. So some of that would make sense. But then when I come back and I'm interfacing with this, some of my goals are, I might not work with a client for 6 months. And then so if all of a sudden they message me out of the blue and they're like, hey, we want to pick back up on that project. I've got this custom assistant over here that's already trained on everything that we did for that client. And I can ramp back up quickly on my own stuff instead of, rifling through Notion and emails and all of these things to try and remember where we left off. Because that's sort of if you've ever done consulting, I feel like I was way better at this 20 years ago, where if I was, working with 10 different people at the same time, it wasn't a big deal. I could just juggle all of those details without a problem. Now, I got a detail cap. I've got I hit my details threshold at about 12:30 in the afternoon, and then I got to start picking and choosing what gets allocated to memory. So my notes get pretty meticulous in some cases. So yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to figure out is I still think it makes sense to build it out in this system. I'd like to finish this because this has been pretty cool. I need to decide at what point we understand right here in this part of the workflow, we understand what the domain is. And so in theory, it might make sense for this create assistant task that's right here to actually live in this space. If we were going to commit and start a website crawl job, we might actually want to create that assistant within that scenario. I think that makes sense. So we could do that in our second scenario right here, either in a branch. Let's see, we've got our website URL. That, yeah, I think I might do that right there. I might just add a module right in the middle. OpenAI module. Now, if you've never worked with vector stores are basically a database that stores data in a way that's accessible to an LLM. The way data is stored for LLMs or AI models is basically numbers. And the way that I sort of understand this is that when you train a model and you create all of these embeddings, you end up with this sort of vector space where different things have not only different weights, but they have different relationships to each other. So if you think about the term cart, cart exists in the context of a shopping cart, but it also exists in the context of a cart like ox and cart. And so that's the challenge that training LLMs or all LLMs have, is understanding which cart we're talking about. And so the vectors sort of represent in this space, if you will, not only where that particular thing lives, and things with similar vectors will live in things in a similar concepts or similar space will have similar vectors, is the way I understand it. So when you add files to a vector store, it transforms those files into a format, basically just numbers, that your LLM can understand, that can work with. And then you can search against that. So in this particular case, I think what we want to do is we want to create a vector store. And you can just arbitrarily do that. Adds files to a specific vector store, or if not specified, creates a new vector store based on the configuration. So we could drop that right in there. It's not necessarily for use with any particular. We're going to create a new vector store. I think the vector store name, what we want to do is just use the domain. Replace that part. So if this comes in as perfect flow funnels, then the vector store would just end up being perfectflowfunnels.com. I wonder if we can do that. I'm super curious about this now. But then the other thing the thing that makes that cool is that if we create the vector store here, oh, I see. And if we create the vector store, oh, I see. We might not be able to do it here because it wants us to attach files to the vector store. How does this work again? Let me just pull that out. Add a new module. I have to relearn this every time I do it. This is called being a generalist, learning on the fly. Upload a file to be used. Okay, so I'm actually pretty sure. I'm just going to remove this module. I think I've just convinced myself that those vector stores need to be created and updated here in the third scenario. We won't be able to do it ahead of time. I had assumed we would. But I think as those files come in on that webhook, then we can upload those files into OpenAI and then attach them to a vector store. Let's just have one more look at that, because I think, clean this one up. We'll save it. Auto align, save, leave it there. Come back to this third scenario. I don't think we need this HTTP module anymore. We can just pull that out of there. Delete. This is just a variable module that's in the middle so we can inspect the data. I'm going to add a module here. And we'll do the same thing. Upload a file. we need to decide what the file name is going to be. And so since it's crawl.page, oh, and that's a collection. Interesting. Who was it that they said they wanted to work with an iterator? We might need to do that right now. That's interesting that there's no, oh, because it's an object in that collection. Okay, let's tinker with this, see where we can get. Okay. We're learning on the fly. If you're here on this channel, we're just figuring things out as we go. Save that for a second. I think we need to come back, and what I'm going to do is actually trigger this job for the job that we, one of the things I don't like about the Firecrawl, one of the things I wish that they had, was if you go into the Firecrawl website and trigger a job, you cannot specify a webhook here. I wish you could, because I could just manually trigger the job here on the website and go from there. But what I'll do is I'll just pull open my editor over here, and I'll trigger the job. Let's see. We can do this together. I'll show you. This is, we were talking about Jupyter Notebooks earlier. So this is how I use Jupyter Notebooks every day, because I do a lot of scraping. I don't always use make.com for scraping, especially if I have a lot of data that I'm scraping. So what we're going to do is I'll give you a tiny little taste of my workflow here, if that's helpful or interesting. What I need to do is, first thing I'll usually do, I'm just going to create a folder. I always have one folder in my my computer called Sandbox. I'm going to call this Aaron's Personal Assistant Files. And we're just going to close that because we don't need it. I'm going to open a folder. It's in the Sandbox. That's the one right there. We're going to create a brand new file. I'm going to save it as test crawler.ipynb. And it added that .i at the end. That's really annoying. I have no idea why it does that. All right, so we've got our Jupyter Notebook. I'm just going to add a little title to the top here. Testing out, triggering, what's it called again? Firecrawl? Firecrawl, yeah. Firecrawl.dev. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. So now this is how I'll typically do this. I need to get my API key out of here, and I don't want to share it with the world. So if you give me a second here, I'll get logged in. Here we go. Dashboard. I'll typically do this in my, this is the way I'll set things up, because you're always working with an API key of some kind. And so I will typically put it in just in a local file, maybe a .env, or in this case, usually I'll just do like a secrets file. So let me just pull that out of there for a second. New file. Not the end of the world. All right, save that there. So I've got my secrets there, and then I can just, I'll load that up. I don't want that. And so this is what my day-to-day looks. This is what my day job looks like now. Is I'll just start talking to my IDE. Oh, what we should do, a really great way to approach this, because we want to test this, is we'll go back to the documentation, and we'll grab, this is the example that we used. They have a Python example here, but I'm not going to use that. I could, but I'm just going to use this because Cursor's going to write the code for us anyway. So we're going to come back into here. I'll just save this as example code for a minute, just so I have it. We don't actually want that full request because we have a whole request. It's in the second one, which is right here. This is what our body looks like right here. So we'll grab all of that. And then, yeah, actually we can get rid of this chunk. So paste that in. That's our actual. The only thing that needs to change is the website URL needs to be, because we're just testing this out. Perfectflowfunnels.com. We'll paste that in there. This now has our exact configuration just the way that we want it. And the first thing I want to do is say, I have a local file called secrets. No, that's not what I wanted. Need to hit Command K. There we go. I have a local file called secrets.txt that I need to load what did I call that? I forget the name of the service again. Firecrawler. Firecrawl. I think I call it Firecrawl token. Firecrawl token that needs to be set into the environment. So the reason I do it that way is because once it's in the environment, then we can just use it wherever. So like I said, I don't write code anymore. I mean, I wrote code my whole career, but basically I just use Cursor to write the code for me. This is very simple code to write because it's not complicated. I'm not using Firecrawl token, follow up. Set the value to the Python environment as a variable. Set the value as a Python, an environment variable, which is what I actually want. Yes, thank you. Okay, so now run that. We need to set our Python environment again. I'm using 3.9. So now we can go look at their Python example. Oh, and they actually just have they're just using requests anyway. That's fantastic. So I thought maybe they're going to have an SDK or something like that. So we could probably just copy paste this and use it. We would need to tweak, obviously, the payload. The other thing we'll do is we'll just make sure that we have requests installed. So requests is a library in Python that lets you just talk to the web. We can call command line. If I start with this bang, this exclamation mark, instead of interpreting this cell as Python, it will interpret it as bash or the command line. So in this case, I want to pip install requests. Pip is a library for Python that installs packages. It might be pip3. We'll try this. Yeah, it's got to be pip3. So now it'll install that requests library for us so that we can, and I think we can actually just copy paste this whole thing now. And create another code block. The thing that we want to change, obviously instead of that, we're going to be using this. This is our, we'll just format this again. Create a new block. Format. That should work. Probably just get rid of that whole block now, and we'll just replace the whole payload with our payload. Doesn't like the falses or the trues because they need to be Python. Good. The token here needs to go in the authorization header. We've got that set in the environment. We could do it both ways. We could just set this and say Firecrawl token equals the same value. Would work either way. So then here what we can say, because this is Python, we got a variable we need to interpolate or inject into the string. So we put an F in front, which will format it, and then these kind of curly brackets, and then we can just say Firecrawl token. And so now it will inject that in there. Bump that up a little bit. So now, in theory, we can test this. We're definitely in code land. We're definitely in Python. Before I run this, I'm going to save the notebook. I'll just come back over and make sure that our handler is running. Because what we wanted to do, we noticed that that data coming in is, oh, it is a collection. Data 1. I wonder why it won't let me access what's, let's do this. Open up that webhook. Maybe let's grab that data 1 collection. I'm not sure why it's not showing me the details of this collection in make.com here. So I should be able to go dot something or see what's in there. It's not an array, it's a collection. So we'll just run this and we'll see if we can extract that data. Run the scenario, wait for new data. Now we're going to kick off the job. It's got our webhook. Because we have the webhook running, we're probably going to have to go back and run that a couple times. But now we're going to manually test that. We've got our webhook right here. We're going to push that in. Let's just run this and see what happens. Success. There's the job ID, so on and so forth. That's already been triggered because that's our first crawl.started. We'll run that again, wait for new data. The next one that comes in is what we're interested in. When one of the pages gets crawled, this is the data that we want. So now we have a look at that again. Data, collection, there it is. That's what we want. The markdown, the raw HTML, and the metadata. That's exactly what we want. So now what I want to do, now I can add in that module. Because what I'm thinking is, we're going to do the upload a file thing. The file name is going to be, we'll just go right from the first one. Oh no, it doesn't like that. How about metadata? Okay. We're going to use the title. We're going to use the title of the file, use the title of the page for the file name. And then the file data, I want to again use I'm going to go like this. I'm going to do this in a very markdown-ish way. I'm going to do a title for that. I'm going to do a number 2 heading for the description. And then we're going to come down and we're going to put the markdown in there. So our file is going to look like this. It's going to be uploaded for the purpose of assistance, because we're going to attach it to our assistant later. And then I'm going to hit OK. OK. If I run that again, I wonder if it's still scraping. Let's just test this out. We'll run that job one more time. Again, the nice thing about Jupyter Notebooks, these cells, you can just run it again, just like a script. Kick that job off one more time. Again, this will come in. It'll hit this endpoint with the crawl started, and then we'll wait for the second one again. Oh, noticed I wasn't paying any attention to my my comments. Adam says, does Cursor have an extension for use in VS Code? Cursor is VS Code. It's a fork of VS Code by Cursor. I don't think they have an extension though. I know a good friend of mine uses GitHub Copilot, and he really likes it. We kind of go back and forth because there's cool features and all these things. We started that job again, but it didn't kick off any webhooks like I expected. Insufficient credits. We've used all my credits. That's where we are today. So we're in a pretty good spot. Looks like one of them did come in. It was Crawl Page. Hey, Hillcrest. I'll give you a recap, and then we're getting close to the end. I've been on the live for a couple hours, so we'll just give a quick recap. What exactly we're trying to accomplish here. We got to this point. The file did get uploaded, which is great. It's called Join Our Discord, which is interesting. I don't know if we need that one, but that's okay. I just wanted to know that it was going to work. And then the next step would be from here to attach it to a vector store, or maybe keep track of the file. Maybe that's what we want to do. There's a couple pieces in here I haven't 100% figured out how I'm going to pull this off yet. And that's what makes the problem so fun. This is what my day-to-day looks like as doing automation stuff is like Adam said earlier. It's like, oh, you could just code this. And it's like, well, I could, but if I code it, if I program it, I can never really hand it off. I own it forever, right? But there are some parts of this, my goal when I work with an organization, if I'm doing automation for an organization, isn't to build this amazing system and then go, here you go. That's not what I want to do. Typically what I'll do is when I'm working with an organization, I'll say, okay, I want you to understand how this works. I want to work with you so that you know how these pieces work. Not only so, I will help you maintain this if you get in trouble, but I want you to be able to take what we've built here and start to elaborate on it for different areas in your business, right? Because my goal isn't software development. I've done software development for 2.5 decades. I try not to write software anytime I can help it because the paradigm has changed. And a lot of these scenarios that I'm building automations for, they don't need custom software. They're just simple solutions. They're a problem that the business owner hasn't solved yet because they don't know how, they don't have time to learn all of this stuff. And so that's why it says in my profile, bridging the tech gap, because I know business owners that are still running their businesses on the same Google Sheet they've been using since 2003, or not Google Sheet, sorry, Excel, the same Excel spreadsheet. And they've taken it to incredible lengths to mimic their business processes. And they have no notion of things like make.com or Airtable or any of this stuff. And they might not even need all that stuff. Something as simple as Slack and just a couple tiny little automations would just like change things. Or sometimes business owners who are a little bit more savvy, they'll be using 9 different tools to try and fix one business process and are having trouble getting them to work together. So those are the scenarios that I typically walk into, where it's like 1 hour of my time might save them a week worth of work. And then I can support that organization in, okay, you're in charge of the automations. Let's look at some of these tools. This is how they work. This is what you can do with them. Let's keep it simple because we don't want to get overly complicated. We don't want to map out everything. Let's pick the things that are really, really annoying. You're typing data into this thing every day. You're doing intake for 10 clients a day, and it's always missing information, and it always has to be copied and pasted, and then that goes into Google Drive, or you print that as a PDF and you send it over there, and then they type it in somewhere else. Let's fix that. That's just a waste of time. First of all, if you're doing intake, let's just put a form on your website somewhere with the exact requirements that you need before you can move ahead with that customer. Or if it's a salesperson that's inputting that data, let's nag that salesperson with an email or a text message being like, hey, you need to put this data in before we can move forward with this. Fix some of those broken processes. Lots of businesses talk about AI and shiny and all this different stuff, and they have broken processes in their business. You don't need AI. You need to fix some of that stuff. Stop wasting time. That's what I try to do, is come in and look at a business and say, why are we spending 8 hours a day on this thing? That doesn't make sense. Why do you have 6 people spending 8 hours a day on this thing? We don't want to get rid of anybody, But these people understand your business. They understand the institutional knowledge within your business. They understand what you do. They understand all of the complex problems. If we can take some of the redundant, annoying stuff out of their day, they can work on interesting, creative problems for your business and add more value and help you differentiate what you're doing. That's the highest leverage activity you can do, is empowering your staff to help you make decisions about your business, because they understand it right now. Businesses will bring in consultants sometimes. Now you got to spend 3 to 6 months teaching the consultant what you do. Your staff already know what you do. They're just wasting all their time on stuff that's annoying. Or not annoying necessarily, just eating up their time. What exactly are you trying to do? I've taken AP Comm Sci in school and I'm lost. I'm sorry. I should have explained this clear. What we're doing is I'm trying to build out a personal assistant using make.com that will take an email from a booking that I get on a booking calendar. And it hits my personal assistant, which happens to be in OpenAI, ChatGPT. And it can go out and scrape the client's website. If it's a business domain, it'll scrape their site. And then it'll put all of that information, hopefully, into another custom assistant for that customer specifically. So that over time, I can build up not only just a database of information about that customer, but then I can interact with it. I can send an email to that. I want to be able to interact with my personal assistant over email. That's kind of, and we're just building it for fun. We're just building it to sort of make some, build out some scenarios in make.com. So we've got 3 scenarios here already. 1, 2, 3, which is sort of this one here and this one here and this one here. We've sort of started all 3 of those. The part that we're at right now is we need to figure out how to tie in this create a new custom assistant and tie that data into the database. We've got a few things we need to work out. And I think that's what we'll do on the next live. I am from Canada. I'm in Western Canada right now, Southern BC. For the booking service right now, I use a platform called High Level, which is a marketing platform. I kind of, if it makes sense for my clients, I'll use High Level for them as well. It's just got so many things in it. It's really cool, like the ability to do SMS. It's got a workflow engine. You can build automations right in the platform. It's cool. I use it for lots of stuff. Again, because it just does everything in one place and does it 80% pretty good. And that's good enough. Yeah, I'm not, it's a marketing thing, and like it does affiliate stuff, and I don't do any of that. I use it for, it's a tool. Hillcrest says, when it comes to online services, AI new languages that have come up for the last 12 years. It's extremely cool. I took C++ and Java when I was in school. Times have changed, and times keep changing. That's the whole, I think that's kind of the point of tech, you know, or not the point of tech, the point of, that's kind of the, some of what we're talking about is just that everything does change. Everything keeps changing, and that's been, if I look back at the last couple decades of my career, that's sort of the undercurrent, the underlying, what do they call that? It's not the plot. Theme, the theme of my career. Tech changes. And so if you're in tech, if you're a software engineer, I encourage you to understand not just how LLMs work, but to play with the tools. For instance, I got called out today a couple times. Folks are saying, hey, you better go check out Perplexity. It looks pretty cool. That's like the 2nd or 3rd time now. So I know I better get in there and start playing with it and figuring out, okay, what do I like about this? Obviously something about this Perplexity that people keep calling it out. So I've looked at it. I haven't been in there too deep. If it'll solve some of the problem faster. Again, I don't need, for my own personal purposes, I don't need a smarter model per se. Because, you know, like I said, 50% of what I do, I can do with ChatGPT 3.5. Because I'm not giving my AI hard problems. I'm giving my AI easy problems because I want it to get the right answer all the time. So how many more tokens or any of that? I mostly don't care about that. But if it does like better job at web scraping, absolutely, I'll definitely look at it. Because web scraping is something I do a ton of. We're just going to go for a couple more minutes if there's any last greetings, questions, any of that kind of stuff. And then I think when we get back on the next live in a day or two, we're going to tie into this next problem. Can we get this assistant database set up? If we could get this to a place where the web pages were going in to the database, the vector database, attached to an assistant, and then the next step after that would be having the personal assistant be able to access that in an automated way. I think that'd be pretty fantastic. There's probably a little bit of work there. I might take a little bit of this offline and see if I could. I got a couple problems as we worked out today. Remember, we've got this one right here, this create assistant. We originally sort of thought that would be in the first scenario, but now it seems more like that particular one is going to be down here in this scenario. It seems more like it's going to be down here. That goes there. This goes here. Because we need to have the files first. Before we can do anything else, we must have the files first. So it looks like the assistant creation is going to be down. We have to push the data into the vector store first. Then we can create the actual vector database. Then we need to, well, I guess we can create the assistant up there and then attach the vector store. I got a few things I need to figure out here. I haven't thought through 100% of the way. But if we can get to the place where all three of those things are happening, we're going to be in a pretty good spot. All right, we're winding up here. So if you're still hanging out on the live, you must like the sound of my voice because I've been talking forever. It's good to see a lot of the same faces again today. Thanks for stopping in. I hope you'll join me on the next one. I'm trying to go live at least once a week. I see folks were going live all week this week, and I should have, but I took advantage of everybody in quiet mode this week to catch up on a few things, so that's been really good. Yeah, so we're just going to leave it at that for today. I shut down the stream once again. Thanks for everybody for showing up, and we'll see you on the next one. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you on the other side.